What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the CryptoKreamers. And today we're featuring one of my favorite artists. His name is Lucho. I'm going to pull up all his art during the podcast. And man, he makes some dope sticker sets and he makes some dope art in general. And it's all very unique and it's all very Satoshi / anonymous / cool. But I'm going to let him describe it. What's up, Lucho?
What's up, man? How's it going?
Good, man. Welcome to the podcast, bro.
Good to be here, man.
Awesome. Great to hear that.
Yeah, man. I mean, my art, how I would describe it, basically, I have self-described as a propagandist in the past. Basically, just being that I'm a person who is making, content and artwork that's to basically support a cause, So, yeah, man, I mean, you can see it in my art. It's all like, it has a very, I guess you could say revolutionary feel to it, or, kind of like draws on a lot of the bright colors and schemes, that people used in the past to rally people behind certain causes, like, the Liberty bonds for World War II and stuff like that. So, I've done that. I've done a lot of research in like, how to make my message, like communicate my message most effectively, and that's how I began doing what I do, man. I really feel passionately about Bitcoin, and more so the problem that we have with the banking system and just the way that money works is so convoluted, hard to understand. So my artwork focuses on educating people. I want to educate people on what is Bitcoin, why is Bitcoin better than dollars, all this stuff. And that's basically, I'm just repeating the same message over and over again in different ways and different pieces of art.
Of course, man. So I love that. And that's exactly what I'm going to use for my promo tweet of this podcast is the first Bitcoin propagandist. I love that. That's awesome. And so I did a podcast with Keep It Simple Bitcoin, and he makes a tutorial for the cold card. And what's awesome is during our conversation, we got into like a lot of the philosophical aspects of Bitcoin, and we reached like this kind of like epiphany, which is like Bitcoin kind of, it's a different thing to different people, right? And like where you fit into the equation is like, man, you're the fucking propagandist, and you've managed to make this into a business, which is awesome. And I kind of want to hear more about your journey. Like, what is your personal journey? Like, what was your first experience with Bitcoin? When did you get into Bitcoin? And when did you kind of have that Bitcoin moment? We all have this moment, right? Where it's like the moment that your eyes just widen up and you're like, you know what? This is better money. When was that?
Right. So I guess I have to say it was in 2016. So I had seen Bitcoin pop up like a couple times, and I wrote it off like a lot of people, back in 2012, 2014, Bitcoin made the news a couple times with Silk Road and all that. And I even had people ask me, because I was studying finance at the time, and they would say, hey, what do you think about this Bitcoin thing? And I would say, let me look at it. Let me see what the price is doing. And I would be like, hey, that looks like a bubble, man. Like, I don't know about that thing, And so I did the same thing that a lot of people to this day kind of write off Bitcoin for those reasons. And then in 2016, late 2016, basically it was just that I had kind of like fumbled around and at least read about it and kind of learned what is blockchain and what Bitcoin is from like a really base level. And I just went like, how do I buy this thing? And I did the Coinbase app. I opened it and I was like, oh, there's other things now. Like I saw like, oh, there's Ethereum now and there's Litecoin now. So it was like Litecoin had just launched on that app at that point. And that's one moment when I realized, well, this market must be expanding. Like, what is there competition for, whatever Bitcoin is? Why all the prices are going up? So like now I'm interested from like a speculative angle. Like these things, these numbers are going up. It looks like kind of like investing in like a microchip or something, like a micro stock or something.
Mm-hmm.
So let me learn about it more. And that's basically when I started to really, it was like November, December of 2016. that I really started reading a lot about Bitcoin, and started even like I started purchasing a little bit. And then I just kept getting into it more, and I started seeing it as like a solution to a lot of the problems that I saw. And that's basically like, if I'm going to oversimplify the world just for the sake of speaking to it, is that I used to make art. I used to make art that I would call propaganda before I got into Bitcoin. And all my art was about showing people what the mainstream media is directing their attention towards, and what these narratives are, which ones might be false narratives, and what the truth could be actually. So that was like, my first like real full-time foray at being an independent artist. And I learned a lot doing that, but I also felt like it's kind of like, I like to use this example of like, I had this job where my boss basically, he would say, hey, whenever you're going to come to me with a problem, I already have like your solution, because people like that more. And do that with everyone. Like, don't bring people problems, bring people a problem. Like, you can raise a problem and then suggest a solution. Like, that's always going to work better for you. And basically, like, once I really understood Bitcoin, because I used to make a lot of like anti-Federal Reserve artwork, because I studied and understand how financial markets work. I understand how money's created and how debt is the base of it all since we got off the gold standard. And I also understand that people don't really get it. But then I felt like, oh, here's something, like, now I have the solution for like that problem that's probably the most central problem to the rest. So if there's like corporations that have too much power, corrupt politicians and governments that are like always putting more their authoritarian laws on people, and that's probably, a lot of it has to do with the way that the money system works, because the money the money system is being used to buy influence and to buy power to make decisions, right? So at that point, I realized like, hey, this Bitcoin is like, it's more than just like a speculation thing. It's more than just, something that's only going to be used on the dark web. It's actually its own financial system with its own currency on top of it, that's decentralized. And like, then it became like very, very early in like me doing my first designs became like, all right, let's do this like decentralize and conquer. Like, instead of divide and conquer, like, yeah, we're going to decentralize the money system and like take that back, take that power, that economic energy, that power, form of power, and bring it back to the people. Also like privacy and stuff like that. So yeah, man, I mean, like, my initial, rabbit hole experience was like, a little, almost like a bait. It's not a bait and switch, but it was like the bait that I saw was like gains, like everyone wants gains at first, or a lot of people do. And then my like intention and interest in Bitcoin switched over to the political, like, type of like financial revolution that it can be as well. And my art's been a part of my participation from day one as well.
Absolutely, man. So you brought up some really interesting points, right? Which is like, you say bait and switch, I say more like Trojan horse, right? Because like
That's a better way to put
it
it.
gets people interested into the investment aspect, because I don't care who you are, man, unless you live in Venezuela or something. Like, you buy Bitcoin for the first time because you think it's going to go to the moon. But once you're in it, if you're not in finance like you are, right, it kind of forces you in a way to kind of understand how the current money system works, right? Just out of pure curiosity, because you are invested, right? And then once you understand how the financial system works, you kind of understand that your working capital, right, is kind of getting ripped off, right, in a way,
Yeah.
right? So, man, that journey, right, for everyone is so different, right? And I'm glad that you told me that story, because you came from you already came from because a lot of people don't get, I'd like to use the key word here, the key term, which is like red pilled, but a lot of people don't get red pilled until they're already kind of into the rabbit hole. But you already came from an understanding of, listen, I had an education in finance, so I kind of understand how this whole shabacle works. And you already came from the aspect of, listen, the mainstream media is kind of painting a narrative, right? And that's what they do, right? So you already came from that understanding. So Bitcoin just fit right in, you know, like it wasn't like what are you talking about? Because what I've noticed, especially like older people, right? No matter how rich they are, but older people, what I've noticed is that they have a much harder time. Because you tell them, listen, this isn't tied to anything. And instead of being like, so I get to opt out, they're like, but what's it backed by? You know, and then you kind of have to explain, like, what's the dollar backed by? And then you kind of have to go that back and forth until they kind of have their eureka moment. So with you, it was more like a fast track. You're like, okay, this is what was missing. You know, Bitcoin serves a purpose. You know, there was no convincing for you.
Yeah, basically, I mean, even so that I was like trying to just start spreading that message just because I understood it so well from the get-go. Like, I'm not a super technical guy. I can't really speak to like, you know, running your node and mining, you know, and all this stuff, that cryptography, like I don't know about that still to this day. But the financial education that people lack, I had. So and like it's kind of like what you were saying about getting red pilled, like that's another way that I like to explain that I'm trying to do like what my mission is. Like I'm trying to spread that message, and like one of my most popular images has been Dr. Satoshi's orange pill. And it's like this old pharmaceutical propaganda, like an image that kind of is reminiscent of that, but is like saying like a lot of talking points that you even just shared, that it's kind of like the money system is kind of ripping you off because of inflation, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and I even use like similar words. It's like that it's robbing people blind, you know, through inflation and debt bubbles. Like it's really robbing people blind with like this hidden tax that people don't see, and it happens over such a long course of time that people barely feel it a lot of times, you know. And I have that conversation all the time with people because I feel like, you know, my job is like, it's an artist, it's to create art, but my job is also as like a communicator, you know, it's communication design as well. So I have most of my conversations now, you know, they really are like, hey, so, you know, as soon as it's like, what do you do? It's like, oh, I make art about Bitcoin. Do you know about Bitcoin? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, people will say, oh, first, you know, they might say, oh, I know about it. It's that like digital money or whatever. And like some people kind of know, but some people don't know, because I'm living in Mexico right now, actually, right? So a lot of them, like, they don't know as much as like an American, for example. So one of my things is like I really want to reach like the LATAM market in general, even have like a lot of Spanish like artwork, because I know that they, like you were mentioning with Venezuela, like they stand to benefit more actually from like the problems with their own currencies, because Americans do have the benefit of like, yeah, the system is bad and all of them are losing value, and even the dollar's lost like 97% of its value since we put the Fed in 1913. But all the other countries have been doing worse than the dollar, right? Like all their native currencies have been doing worse. So for them, it's like they really don't get it, because like they all understand that holding dollars is the thing to do, because that's how they preserve their value. But they super don't understand what Bitcoin is and why that would be better than the dollar. So like the latest thing that I've been kind of like understanding and kind of like wrestling with a bit is like, how do we get past the blind faith that a lot of people have in the dollar? Because it's almost like a religious thing with the dollar, and I hate to use that word, but it's like in the Christian faith, for example, they teach you that you should have a blind faith, and like that's good for people who are in this faith. But for something like a government controlled currency, you shouldn't have blind faith in it, you know, because there are facts that you should be able to find about it, and there should be transparency about it, you know. So I think it's like a lot of people's unquestioning, you know, faith in the dollar is the biggest obstacle for a lot of them. because they see the dollar as the standard for value, and they see it as something that never loses value, which is incorrect. So that you know, that's one of the things that I'm really working on now with my art, to really drive the message home that Bitcoin is better money even than the dollar.
Mm-hmm. So like, I love what you just described, right? Which is the word that I would use is called the shared delusion, right? Which is what the world runs on when they accept dollar bills, right? Like everyone is sharing this delusion, and that's what's propping up the dollar essentially, right? But and the second point that you brought up that I loved, man, is that like you didn't have this tech, and a lot of people have this misconception where they're like, listen, I don't have a technical background, so therefore I can't contribute anything to Bitcoin. And man, Lucho's an excellent example of why you're so wrong in every way. Lucho has found that he is the first Bitcoin propagandist, and he's doing it successfully, and that perfectly segues into basically showing some of his art, right? And what he was talking about Venezuela. So I'm Venezuelan, guys, and this one resonates with me amazingly, right? So this is the Venezuelan Bolivar. And of course, you guys have heard, which is the hyperinflation that is happening over there. So what Lucho did was basically take like a copy of the Venezuelan Bolivar, and he just replaced some of the words in there to basically perfectly express in a very short way, perfectly express why is Bitcoin better, right? So like in a way, this is a meme, but in a way it's like an art piece, right? It perfectly explains why Bitcoin is so good, right? So, and at the same time, it's insulting the previous systems that the governments have weaponized either to use against the world, right, in the form of sanctions, or either to use against their own citizens in form of inflation, right? So, man, this is one of my favorite. This is awesome because it resonates with me like perfectly. So, man, could you explain a little? Could you talk us through? Man, my girlfriend's an artist, bro, and she makes music. So, dude,
Okay.
her way of coming up with these things is so interesting every time. In her case, it's songs, and in your case, it's art, right? So,
Right.
here's the Bolivar, right? And a lot of these, here's Andy Warhol, right? So a lot of these, what I see is, you either take money, straight up money, or you either take, I think this is the Uncle Sam one, right? Where like he says, I want you for the art of me. So could you explain a little bit about what your, the method to your madness, so to speak?
Okay, sure, man. So basically what I've done is I've thought about like images that have impacted me a lot. So even if you want to go to my Instagram account, you might find like a more thorough gallery. Here, and there's a link on my landing page, or you just Instagram.com/Lucho Poletti.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop sharing, and then I'll let you talk, and then I'll pull that up.
So some of the things that I remember like really impacting me a lot as a child were like the war propaganda images. So a lot of that, like I've looked at them and I've said, what kind of language are they using here? What's the message they're trying to convey? And then I've kind of taken that and flipped it, into a Bitcoin. So even so if you look at the very first one on the top, just that one right there is like, there's a video here, but it's basically the art piece that's inside is the PR man, is as I titled it. And it's actually an image. It started with the base image of Edward Bernays. In the fine art prints tab that you have there, you would find it as well.
This one?
In the tab that you have on your browser that says ships from US fine art prints. It's like the next tab over. So Edward Bernays, as you know, is the father of public relations or propaganda. So this is Big Lub would be number one in the series, and then the number two, the image that I want to get on the screen actually is the same couch image. If you click through into that,
this one,
yeah. So PR man, this started with a base image of Edward Bernays, who is like the father of public relations and propaganda in the United States. So if you look inside, like I used an image of him, and then I started transforming it into one of my Satoshi characters, and I covered him in his own like ancient propaganda, right? So here you have like the Liberty Bond campaigns, like you can see on the collar of his shirt. You have torches of freedom on his tie, which is like something that he created, like a campaign of propaganda to make tobacco attractive for women, because it was like a dirty, frowned upon thing in that time. Also, there's like a stack of pancakes and bacon like built into his wardrobe there, and that's
let me make this bigger because
right.
everyone's gonna want to see. Hold on.
Okay. And all these things, like the reason that we have the American breakfast today is because a bunch of like a group of pig farmers came to Bernays, who was known as being like the father of propaganda, Sigmund Freud's nephew, actually, who understands psychology and crowd psychology very well. So yeah, you see like the kid with his eyes behind the stack of pancakes and bacon, like on the arm there. Then you
Oh
have,
shit, right here.
yeah, you have like a lot of cigarette stuff and manufacturing consent and all this stuff. And these are all things that like Edward Bernays gave birth to. And a lot of what he did was used for companies that really weren't selling the best things. But he was the person who approached doctors and said, hey, you recommend Camels, right? You know, like you recommend Lucky Strikes this year, right? You know, so he would get doctors to sign off on these consumable items. So what I did with this art piece, which is part of a series that I call Anonymous Leader, is basically like I'm kind of like force fitting concepts in the Bitcoin world with things like with leaders from, you know, certain political movements or just people who I feel had a lot of impact in society, whether it was good or bad, you know, kind of like transforming that, making something new with it. And really like this is almost like a caricature of myself in a way, because like this is how I see myself. Like here's the crowd, you know, all this collage behind the figure here is like a crowd, collage of different types of crowds. So there's a lot of like overlapping of different figures and groups of people. Then you have the Bernays figure, which is like kind of how I see myself, but also putting the mask on it that I use to promote the Bitcoin movement and kind of transmit that idea of like Satoshi's an anonymous figure, and you know he has no face, and I put that face on a lot of different you know different figures and people, and then I have it kind of showing like between like you know these yellow, green, and red rays. Then you have like the small portion of the image, which is like those who have actually adopted, and like an image of the price inside that. And what I've done here is like kind of like the crypto abyss is like the red zone here, where you know a lot of people have gotten burnt and shaken out, and you know just never bought high, sold low, and left. And then you have like the where the price stayed after the big bull, you know, the great FOMO of 2017. You have all like the FUD articles are actually like all laid out behind all this price movement here. And then you have like kind of the heavens and the you know the moon boy astronaut, you know, heavens green area that we should be entering in the next bull run, in the coming bull run that I think we may be kicking off right here right soon.
Same, I believe that also.
And basically like that's almost like I say it's like almost like a caricature of me and others in the space who have been promoting and telling people like, hey, don't listen to all the FUD, you know, all this price, all this is happening in this yellow zone here is only happening in the medium term. And the long term view is like all this crowd is going to adopt it, and eventually, you know,
I
price will be higher.
love, sorry to interrupt you, but I love the moon, because above the heavens, moon.
Yeah, yeah, man.
But man, that's so cool. Dude, I love the fact that you just explained me your piece of art, right? Like I didn't even see this shit, and now you're explaining it to me, and my mind is blown, bro. I'm like, holy crap, this is so interesting. This is so cool. And I
Awesome,
love
man.
how you see yourself in the picture. And man, the way that you describe it is just, dude, the picture doesn't do it justice without hearing it from the artist himself, bro. So
Yeah,
man,
man.
thank you so much for that.
I think that it goes like at some point. I really hope that I'm working now on like really building my brand and kind of like starting to market as well, because I really hope that people one day can like realize like all the thought that's put into like the majority of my artwork. Because the image, you could look at it and say like, oh, that's kind of cool looking, but it really is like I'm not just putting things without meaning on those images. It all has meaning,
Of
so
course. And it's all unique, guys. And I'm going to put, of course, I'm going to put Lucho's Instagram and his website down in the description. Of course, he accepts Bitcoin for all of this. You could pay him in Bitcoin. You could also pay him in dirty fiat that you're not going to use for. Put that fiat to work, guys. And man, this is awesome. And I'm sure a lot of other, this is Napoleon's famous picture.
yeah.
I actually have one of these bills, guys. This is the Zimbabwe. One of Zimbabwe's famous currencies went to 100. This one's 1.2 quadrillion, but one of Zimbabwe. Oh, you changed it. Okay, so
it was 100 trillion zim dollars.
So hold on, give me 1 second. Let me see if I can find it. You know what? I'm not even gonna. It's somewhere deep inside, but I'll put it in the link. So
yeah.
This is so cool, dude. And I love the attention to details, guys, is ridiculous. Like this doesn't do it justice, but I'm going to link this, of course. But man, it says, better money since 2009. It's so clever how you change this, right? It says BTC and various, I'm sure this number has a meaning.
Yeah. I mean, that is has the Genesis block number,
Yeah.
like kind
The
of like
January
built
3rd,
into it.
2009. Dude, this is crazy. This is crazy, man. This is so cool. So how long does one of these art piece takes you?
I mean, it really depends. It depends sometimes on like the amount of experimentation that goes into it and like illustration work, because some of them are a bit, more basic. But like something like this image, where again, like the details, so people aren't ripping off my website and printing. I kind of put lower res images there, but even like the pattern behind, you'll see like the caduceus, and it kind of has like, it's showing Bitcoin as medicine is kind of like the image here. If you look at maybe the first image, it's just a pattern that goes behind the image. It's hard to see on the screen here.
Oh, hold on. Let me do the same thing. Give me 1 second. So what were you saying?
Yeah, so basically, like in that image, which is like part of a series that my Cure What Ails You, like the pharmaceutical, kind of showing Bitcoin as the orange pill and like the cure for the money problems that the world has nowadays. The details, things like having patterns in the image that have like a caduceus, like behind the artwork, for example. So it's kind of hard to see there, like I was saying, but if you had like a high res print, you would see it. Yeah.
So it's right here, guys.
Right. So that, I mean, illustrating like the pills and things, like something like this could take me like a day or two, just sitting there and cranking it out.
What are these pills? These pills are super famous. They're like from like this basic ass meditation.
This is
Bayer. Is it Bayer?
This
yeah.
is a Bayer. Yeah. This is a Bayer ad. And then the orange pill design that I have, which is Dr. Satoshi's orange pill, looks very similar to this image, but it uses like capsules that look like the Adderall, the XRs, because it's like an orange pill that like all the college kids would know what it looks like or whatever.
That's so funny, man. Dude, let's keep going through a lot of these because it's so unique to.
There's one that maybe we could go through. One is called Creation and Destruction.
Is it under
my blog? If you go to my landing page on my website, like there's a blog, and you'll see like the last 3 blog posts are like 3 pretty strong pieces that we could talk about. If like one or two of those catches your eye.
Absolutely, man. Do you want to do Better Money Satoshi Citadel version 2?
Yeah, we could do that one if you like.
Absolutely. Okay, so let me take a screenshot of it so I could make it bigger, or else we're gonna have a hard time talking about it. And of course, guys, I'm gonna put Lucho's work down in the video description. So if you guys want to find out more about it, you guys could go to his website directly. And if you want to sponsor the first Bitcoin propagandist, make sure to buy his work. And if you really like him, make sure to buy his work in Bitcoin. So that's really going to make Lucho happy. All right, so this is Satoshi Citadel version 2, and this went on Citadel's second. I don't know if you guys know what Citadel is, but it's. Could you explain it, Lucho, better than I? Because you probably know them more than I do.
The publication.
Yes. So this goes as the magazine cover, correct?
Right.
Or it's supposed to.
So it's a publication that it's really based on like hardcore Bitcoiners, Bitcoiners that have that same objective, kind of like as I do. Some of the people involved are people like Hodlonut, I guess.
Of course, yeah.
Him, a couple other artists, Bitko Yanowski and Cypherpunk Now. And I mean, it's a publication. It's a lot of current events, news, and Bitcoin education stuff, and really just people who are promoting Bitcoin services and adoption for Bitcoin. So it's kind of like a publication that's within the community for the community.
So let's talk about this piece of art, man. It's like, so I'm going to give you my impression. And of course, art is always like, it's a very individual experience, right? It's going to make everyone feel different, right? And art's about what it makes you feel, right? So when I look at this, right, man, I see Satoshi as Jesus, as God. I see the Citadel in the back. I see some flying cars. And most importantly, God has a mask on, right? So if, as Bitcoiners, you kind of see Satoshi as like the man, right? The God, so to speak, if you even want to call him that. But, right? And right here, you see him, but normally you would see a picture of God, but Satoshi has his mask on, so you'll never see it. And then you have the famous Citadel that everyone talks about, either whether it's in space, whether it's a fucking tower. No one knows. That's what's awesome about Bitcoin. And then you have the sun that kind of creates this halo around God, which is awesome. And man, I wish it was high resolution, but you can't, because Lucho doesn't want to get his artwork ripped off, so he's being smart about it. So man, what am I missing here? I hope I didn't butcher it, but that's what it makes me feel.
Actually, I've done newer versions actually of this piece. I've redone the piece like entirely as well. I posted one on Twitter like yesterday that has like, it's all red, like the face is all redone, like the characters all illustrated, and there's actually an animated version of it as well. So I put a lot.
That's exciting.
Yeah, on my super rare, like I sell non-fungible tokens of like the animated works. So all that's available, and you can see it in pretty good resolution as well. The token that I have, but basically, yeah. So here's one that I posted as well.
Look at the details, guys. 6.15 American hold. Shout out.
Yeah.
Vieres y números, which means strength in numbers in Latin. And man, the godlike. And I like how he's more center stage in this one. That's really
cool. So he has actually like a demeanor on him here that kind of like, I don't know, I guess I wanted it to really transmit like a sense of like confidence, and just kind of like a calm, cool, collected figure who's just kind of saying like, look at as the sun sets here, look at this. But this is actually, so this is a variant of the original artwork. If you notice, the original one has, there's a lot of trees involved. There's, Lambos are parked outside across from the Citadel. And this all actually was inspired by the original Bitcoin Time Travelers Reddit post. So some people may be familiar with it, but it is basically like a guy who showed up on Reddit and started saying, you know, this whole, it sounds like a sci-fi story about Bitcoin where like, you know, hey guys, I came from the future and Bitcoin took over the world and it was so scarce that, you know, hardly anyone could afford any, and they had to kill all the whales, and the Winklevi were murdered. And there's
Man.
blood on all your hands, and anyone who has more than a 0.001 Bitcoin is like lives in these citadels, and the citadels are basically like these guarded areas where the Bitcoin class lives, and you know everyone else is, you know, it was like kind of like a bleak future is what the,
Yeah, like dystopian. Man, that is
yeah,
so fucking cool, dude. That is
yeah,
so
it was
cool.
it's really it's a dystopian thing, and my original image, so like I also write about it in that blog post, but long story short is that I set out to kind of like draw like a brighter, like I wanted to create like a brighter future, right? And look like that Bitcoin symbol doesn't work on doesn't work on the but anyway, yeah, so a better future. So the idea, and if you scroll down and you see like even the newer version there as well, uh, these versions, like it's showing like a lot of like natural resources and wealth and gems and sunlight and like a really positive look and outlook on things. And basically, like I set out, like after reading that, it kind of inspired me to try to envision like what could like a distant future, like talking about like 2140 or something like that, like when Bitcoin mining is all done, like all the precious gems have been mined, you know, and basically uh, that's what I set out to do with this image. And the more recent one that I did, which you saw, the red, and none of those gems were there, none of the plants are there, the trees and the sunshine, it's all kind of darker, was kind of like a little more true to just trying to depict like what I felt I was reading in the blog, in the Reddit post, which was kind of like a bleaker future. But
Man, man,
that was just to try to do true to that.
that is so fucking cool, man. This is so cool. You just, man, talk about falling into a rabbit hole. Lucho really fell into the rabbit hole, but to be more precise, not only did he fall into the rabbit hole, he made an art of falling into the rabbit hole, and he's depicting his experience of falling into the rabbit hole. And dude, it is so cool, guys. I just bought this one, the Better Money sticker pack, that I'm going to put a lot of these on my computer and a lot of these, you know, just in random places, bro. But it's so cool to, it's so cool. And a lot of these, you know, these are just traditional images, right? Like the Bitcoin, I mean, sorry, the
The
fucking,
Reddit,
the energy drink
yeah.
thing. This is the Ramona, or the bands, right? It's their symbol. And this is Mexico. I see a Venezuela one back there. So man, it's just, absolute vodka, but it's absolute Bitcoin. So it's so cool. And what you said is so important, man, that like you're basically creating propaganda. Let me make this full screen. You're basically
Yeah,
creating propaganda for Bitcoin. And I think I talked about this as the other day, or I tweeted it. I don't remember, but um, man, so like we live in an era right now where memes are so important, right? It's just like a form of communication. And Lucho not only like, because a lot of people, like, you know, they just take a scene and they, you know, they just narrate it, right? Or they put some words under it. But Lucho makes it original, and he does that by, like, you know, basically, and specifically in this image, right? He puts himself in that perspective. And you know, I think this is CZ. That looks like CZ from here.
it's this one is actually is Vitalik, and it's
Vitalik.
yeah, yeah.
Man, that's so cool,
It's
dude.
pointing.
That's
Vitalik is pointing to Bitcoin as better money in this picture. I think
oh my
I upset a
god.
lot of people, but that was meant to be a little provocative.
Dude, it's so cool. And man, you've just found a way. And of course, he has merch, guys. If you like some of these t-shirts, if you want to piss off some Goldman Sachs employees, you know, just check this out. And of course, Lucho accepts Bitcoin. So if you want to pay him in Bitcoin, he'll be very appreciative for that. And then if you have one of these pictures, you know, take a picture of it, put it on Twitter, and tag Lucho in it. But dude, this is so fucking cool, man. This is so cool. And the way that you've explained it was just mind blowing. But dude,
Thanks, man.
this is
If
just a
you want to
rabbit
go,
hole.
I don't know if
Yeah,
you have time to go over one more, but that
of
piece was
course. Yeah, I would
probably
love
the
to.
piece that you just went over. That looks like a rupee in
Okay,
the
hold on.
collector's editions. There,
In the collector's edition.
it's
Okay,
called Creation and Destruction.
gotcha.
So this is another piece where you can see that there was a base image, like there's a creative constraint there, which is basically like I'm going to take the structure, like the framework of one of the old Indian rupees, and I'm going to use cultural references and just recreate my own version from scratch of like a rupee with Bitcoin imagery and kind of like basically like use like a lot of the most powerful images that I felt like had ever really impacted me from this culture and use them, recreate them in like a Bitcoin way. So basically like this image, you'll see like the first thing you really notice is that there are like two like really detailed illustrations, one on each side of the note. And one on the left side is done after the Brahma figure, which is a figure of creation. And so I show Satoshi as a figure of creation here. You'll see like there's little touches like the trilemma of scalability and decentralization and security, like the scalability trilemma for Bitcoin. You have just a lot of like the Bitcoin Lightning Network, stuff like that, and then a sun. There's a sun rising behind the image with the Genesis code. So that's all like on the Brahma
Oh, it's
side.
baked in. I see it.
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
that is so cool.
And then on the opposing side here, you find the dancing Shiva image, which is almost done like memeish enough, but still done serious enough to where it's not really something that you're gonna laugh at when you see it. But the dancing Shiva is like one of the most symbolically rich images, period. And this image has like the tentacles of the Shiva are reaching into like all the different areas in the universe. And you'll see here, like I'm doing that, but I also have around the frame collages of like all the top fiat currencies in the world. So you have the dollar at the top, and you have the euro and the baht and all
Dude, this
the
is so
different
cool,
different
man.
currency collages, and then you even have the IMF is like at the bottom of this collage. So then the Brahma is also like seated on a rocket, and the flames are burning up the fiat, like all these mounds of fiat
Dude,
behind
this
him
is
and
so
under him.
cool. And
And
it's
he's
you could see the
actually,
little like sparks rising or pieces of ash.
yeah, and he's actually stepping like on the back of what the original was, like this little, it almost looked like a little gremlin figure that is supposed to be like stepping on the back of the ego, was the original symbol. And I transformed this into be stepping on the back of a banker with the logo of the International Monetary Fund, actually is on his chest. So that's like basically like all what's going on in this image. And then you have also a citadel, which is like based on the Taj Mahal here. All the Genesis code built into that as well. And then a lot of the rest of the messaging that's in this is quotes from Satoshi, like the root problem with conventional currency is all the trust that's required to make it work, and that central banks are trusted with to not debase currencies, but throughout all of history that they've proven that they're not worthy of that trust,
Of course.
that they've debased all the currencies that they've controlled. So that's like in a short story, like all the imagery
Dude, that
that's
is
going on here.
so cool. That is so cool. And guys, if you want to buy any of these, you could always go on Lucho's website, and pay him directly and he'll ship it to you. Man, that is so cool. If I ever get more Bitcoin rich, I'm definitely going to buy one of these fine arts, and put it in my room in the Citadel, because they're so original. They're so cool. I love to get, the artists, like, because my girlfriend, like I said, she writes music, man, and
Yeah.
her method is so crazy, and she's a creative person, and it's so cool to like hear it from the artist's mouth, what was his process, like what was he thinking. And man, it's what you said, like in the first question that I asked you, this is the perfect, Bitcoin propaganda, and it's so needed in this space, right? Man, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. The last question that we always ask our guests is always, because this is the CryptoKreamers, is always, what is your favorite ice cream?
My favorite ice cream, I'm gonna have to go with mint chocolate chip.
Okay, cool. I like
What about
that.
you?
I like chocolate, bro. I'm super basic.
Just
I
straight
always
up
get
chocolate.
I always get people, man, and they gave me, like, I interviewed Li Xing from BITVOLT, and man, he gave me this really cool flavor that like it's like native to China, and he said like the fruit name and then gelato, super crazy. And then I've interviewed like other people, and they always give me this crazy flavor. So you're one of them.
Oh wow.
Mint chocolate chip.
I mean, if I had to say, like, and I have like a really super favorite that I haven't tried in years. When I was a kid, I would visit my family in Argentina, and we would have these, lemon. It was like lemon ice cream covered in like chocolate. And now it's like whenever that flavor like strikes me for some reason, I'm like, man, I really want that ice cream, but it's like no one sells that. That's such a strange flavor.
It's such a strange flavor. And well, thanks guys. Listen, if you guys are interested in Lucho's artwork, you can always check all the links down in the description. And if you like the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe and tune into the next one. Thanks guys.